or revisions to the minutes from September. Do we have a motion to approve? Okay. Thank you. Do we have a second? Second. Perfect. Alrighty, well, without further ado, Charlie is going to come up and give an overview of the 2024 update to the RMP projects.
Are you going to run the clicker? Okay, there we go. You answered that question for me. Good morning, everybody. Nice cold morning to come out. You braved the elements and stuff. So try to jump into this. Has it started for me? There we go. Yeah, I did the same presentation last Tuesday at the Environmental Quality and Public Works Committee. So if you saw that and you're seeing a repeat, I apologize. But at the same time, maybe you can catch me in something that I said on Tuesday that I didn't say today. So typical thing we start with as far as the agenda, the overall consent decree status, talk about the remaining obligations, particularly in the capital area. I always like to, when I do this annually, the update for the Environmental Quality Committee, I try to give them an idea of the active projects, what's coming down the pike, you know, what's going to be impacting their districts. You know, the same thing applies for folks that just live here. You know, you want to kind of know which street are we going to blow up next. If you've had the dubious pleasure of living in and around Gainesway or in and around Kennesaw Village Drive, you're well aware of that. And then try to finish this up with the time for questions. This was a new map that I had put in from previous presentations that I had done on this, and it's really just to illustrate where we've come from. All of those dots, when we started down the consent decree, represented recurring sanitary sewer overflows. Every one of them was red meaning that's bad. 15 plus years later, we've turned most of those dots from red to green meaning that's good. So we've come a long way as far as abating overflows. You know, we still have some pockets. Let me see, here we go. We still have some pockets, particularly down in the West Hickman area, along Tates Creek Road, what we call the Merrick Trunk, and working up towards Ecton area. And then we also have some just on the downstream side of the reservoir. There's a collection of them down there. And then you see some spattering of other red dots. Those are the areas that the future projects are coming from. I just like this because it gave, like I said, a really good snapshot of that we've come a long way in the last 15 plus years as far as with the consent decree. Basically, we've finished all the stormwater stuff. We don't have a consent decree obligation anymore relative to the stormwater. Everything is driven by the state issued permit. We finished all the supplemental environmental projects that we were required to do. As a reminder, the supplemental environmental projects were intended to replace the fine. The original civil penalty that the feds wanted to impose on us was somewhere close to $4.5 million. And rather than sending $4.5 million of our money to Washington and never be seen again, basically we negotiated in supplemental environmental projects that basically took the place of that civil penalty. CMOM, Capacity Management, Operation and Maintenance, that focuses on the sanitary sewer operations. As for how are we operating on a system, our system on a day like today, where even it's cold, it's clear, there's no rain. Most of the consent decree was driven about these reoccurring sanitary sewer overflows that happen when it rains. But what are you doing when it's not raining that's preventing overflows because of grease or tree roots or those kind of things? That's an obligation that came out of the consent decree, and it will continue long after the consent decree ends as far as making sure that we're meeting all of the CMOM obligations. You're finally starting to see that in permits now that get issued by the state as well. The RMP, the sanitary sewer RMP projects, that's really what the focus is today, because we've been pounding on that rock for a long time, and we will continue to pound on that rock. That rock got particularly hard around COVID. With the pandemic just completely blew the wheels off of all the momentum that we had given the number of projects that we had to average between 6 to 8 projects a year as far as under construction and complete. And that was virtually impossible to do when the pandemic came along. Even in the aftermath of the pandemic, supply chain issues, cost escalations, a lot of challenges. We finally are, I think, are beginning to get our momentum back now here from that event. Through the course of that event, though, we had petitioned EPA about giving us more time. When we negotiated the consent decree in 2006 through 2008, nobody contemplated there would be a worldwide pandemic that what we went through. And so we felt like we could justify, and we did, were able to justify that we needed more time. So in September of this year, EPA went back to court, and the federal judge approved an extension for the consent decree that extended our full compliance deadline to December 31st, 2030. It was 2026. Now it's 2030. What a relief. Now, it seems like a long time, but in our world, it's not a long time. It takes a really long time to develop and build these capital construction projects. So there's really not any time to waste, but it is nice to have a little more breathing room than they were before. The running joke internally here is whether or not Charlie Martin's going to make it till 2030, because I told the mayor a long time ago that I would see the consent decree through the end. That was kind of what my hope was going to be, is that I'd get to be there for when the confetti fell from the ceiling and they dumped the Gatorade on me and they carried me off the field. I'm not so sure that's going to happen. I might limp off the field sometime earlier than that. But anyway, 2030, if not earlier than that, is now the new goal and requirement. Another thing that changed as part of basically the second major modification of the consent decree was moving semi-annual reports. We did have quarterly reports before, and now they've reduced it down because it was really unnecessary to, see, I'm up here banging into this thing. I was told I had to use it. Anyway, we don't do quarterly reports now. We do semi-annual. So if you're one of those people that go on there looking for those quarterly reports, just realize they will be coming out in August and in February of each year. A big thing for me, if those of you who care about the environment would care about this as well, when the consent decree started, electronic submissions really weren't the vogue. Now everything gets submitted electronically, and they finally were able to allow us to send stuff electronically, as opposed to putting together 15 copies of something that was this thick, and an Abby having to figure out how to get it all mailed out by the deadline. So now everything is submitted electronically through a web portal that EPA and the state are handling. So that's a relief. So next steps is to take that 2030 deadline and the projects that remain and turn it into a more specific schedule that is focused on when a specific project is going to be completed. Obviously can't have something that has every project due all at the same deadline. So it's going to be certain ones that are due by 2025, 2026, so forth and so on. Well, how many projects is that? You see the summary of it there right now is that we had 117 projects to do. 76 of them are complete, in the can. 24 of them are underway, and that's kind of a broad thing there. Is it's either in the design phase, it's in the easement phase, or it's under construction. It means that we're actively spending time on it every week, every month, trying to get it to completion. The remaining 17, those are the ones that we haven't really touched yet. There's a couple of them that we were basically put them on pause because we were waiting to see how the whole urban service boundary issue resolved itself, because we really didn't know which way to go. Now, with greater clarity with that, hopefully we can reinvigorate those projects. But I do believe some of those 17 projects will not happen. That original schedule was developed 15 years ago, and we all know the world has changed a lot. Other things that we have done that were not related to a capital project is actually, in my mind, made some of those projects unnecessary anymore. So as we try to refine the actual schedule, what we call the red-blue schedule, some of those 17 projects, hopefully I can make a compelling argument that we don't need to do those anymore under the context of the consent decree with stipulated penalties and all the other stuff. You see one other footnote there, the Blenheim Way project. That was one that needed to be added to the remedial measures plan schedule because we had discovered reoccurring overflows going on in that area that weren't identified during the investigation phase. EPA contacted me about that 2 weeks ago, I guess, wanted to know where we were with that. I said, well, it's actually getting ready to start in construction in January, and hopefully it'll be done by June. So hopefully we'll have that project done before it ever gets added to the RMP, but we've been treating it like a consent decree project. Related to the RMP, along the way has come this Cleaner Water Kentucky grant program. These are ARPA funds that the governor's office and the legislature decided to reallocate or earmark for water and wastewater projects throughout Kentucky. So various counties got various amounts of money, and we got a fairly good share of it because we're one of the more populous counties. And plus, we didn't have to share it with Kentucky Americans because they're a private water company. They can't use grant money and stuff. And so what we did is we came up with a project list that was balanced. I felt like that we tried to balance it between stormwater and sanitary sewer projects. So, you know, that's both the things that are in my division. So I wanted to try to make sure there was balance there. The red ones, though, are the ones that are RMP projects. So a big help for us as far as be able to get grant money to be able to do some of those and lessen what was going to be the long-term financial burden, originally estimated to be $594 million. The one that might interest people because it's kind of a nebulous name, brownfields. Brownfields is actually the dry cleaner on Southland Drive next to the railroad tracks. That thing sat there for the longest time, kind of being a problem for us because there really wasn't a way to be able to deal with tearing that building down and remediating the contaminated soil that was there. And we had a future RMP project that's going to put a pipeline right through the middle of it. And so along came the grant program and we went, aha! So we applied for grant money for it and got a substantial amount for it. And the building is down and I believe remediation, I'm looking for Greg, there he is back there. Summer of next year, you should start seeing dirt being basically removed from that site. And again, like I said, a future RMP project will be coming up through there, and I'll share that with it. Anyway, $37.8 million of free money, I guess, for Fayette County, which is a good thing. The council is always particularly interested in this. Is the mayor's favorite slide as well, and that even goes back to Jim Gray. The bar on the left represents what we had estimated to spend for projects that have been completed to this point. That was the original estimates. The green bar on the right is how much we've actually spent. So we're trending below what the original spend was estimated to be, which obviously for elected officials, they love that. You know, $595 million was the original estimate. And, you know, I was told at the time is we'll get the thing done and get it done on time, but trying to find a way to get it done for less than $595 million. And so we're trending okay with that. When I've used this one before, though, the gap between the two was greater. We're starting to lose traction on this, and I think because a lot of it, that original estimate didn't reflect the inflationary times that we've gone through over the last 5 years. So we keep watching that, but like I said, to be able to get some grant money will help keep this thing at least on the right side of it. Active projects. This is Jessamine County. Right there is West Hickman Treatment Plant. You're following along Brandon Road, and then coming up Tates Creek Road, turning right onto Kennesaw, heading up the hill towards the Kroger there at Heartland, working your way over through the air navigation area there behind Heartland Park, down Armstrong Mill, up the bike lane on Squires Hill, and here's the bike lane right there, and then Buckhorn over to East Hickman Pump Station, which is at the dead end of Alumni. Thank you. I keep wanting to always think about Buckhorn because we get complaints all the time from Buckhorn. Anyway, it's been a long project. This was the project that we came up with that avoided going across Overbrook Farm. And as disruptive as this has been, I keep reminding people, we basically saved $25 million by going in this direction. And it's finally beginning to wrap up. I think the pipeline will be in service probably sometime in the spring of next year. We're working feverishly to be able to get the paving done. That section right there that's in the yellow box probably will not get done. The best that we can do is probably get the concrete up to surface and try to smooth it out for as much as possible. I make the personal sacrifice on that because I live inside that yellow box, and so I get reminded by my neighbors every day about how the road is still messed up. But we're getting there with that one. It's important because it is the connection point for this project. If you've driven out Armstrong Mill Road towards DeLong, you probably have noticed a lot of work going on in the field, and you're right. That is the DeLong Road pump station, and it is down here, and hopefully will look just like this. You wonder whether the artist rendering is actually going to be the reality. I don't know who that guy is right there. And we don't have any Volkswagens in our fleet, but it's there anyway. What this does is it eliminates a pump station that's located right here. That was one of the red dots that you saw in one of the earlier maps, the Armstrong Mill pump station. There are development plans that have been waitlisted here along Armstrong Mill for the last couple of years because of this limited capacity pump station here. When this goes online, sometime late next year, after the East Hickman project is done, it will pump to it, and it will open up everything that's inside that yellow box for potential development, because it does drain to that area, and it is already in the urban service boundary prior to the this most recent last year. This one is one that actually I think is finished. When I put this presentation together, it was active, and it's not anymore. I keep getting my buttons messed up here. There we go. This is what we call the Wolf Run F trunk sewer. It comes along Wolf Run and comes up behind Frisch's, what I understand may not be Frisch's much longer, and went under Harrodsburg Road, a couple bores, worked its way across Clays Mill Road, came up South Bend, and has stopped here on Lafayette Parkway. Lafayette High School is roughly up here where the blue horse is. I had the yellow box around it because they were still working there, but when I went by there last week, it looks like they've wrapped up there. The particular interest for the neighbors have been so good out there. They've really been very cooperative for what they've had to go through, not with us, but just with Kentucky American and all the other utilities, is that we've got a laydown area on these 3 lots that were bought as part of the Stormwater program as far as flooding abatement. They would desperately like to have those lots back, and so we're working really hard to get the next leg of this, which is what's Trunk G, underway. It's out for bid right now. I think it's supposed to be awarded on the 17th. Pending projects. This is a big one for us. This is New Circle Road on the other side of town. Basically, the starting point is roughly up here near Lexmark IBM property, or what used to be. There's the tennis courts there for the park. And basically coming along, we're not in New Circle itself. We're working on access roads through parking lots and everything else, working our way over, and then we cross over roughly where the railroad overpass is, and then come along what is the old Kmart building, which will actually soon be the new water quality building, and then come along New Circle here and then tie in up on this end. This is one of those projects that impacted the cost graph that I had mentioned before. The original budget for this was $9 million, and you can see it came in at 12. So hopefully that is an anomaly and not necessarily a trend. I mentioned this one before because this was the one that we're adding to the consent decree unofficially because we're working on it now. This is the Blenheim, what we call the Blenheim trunk sewer. Man of War is right over here, and this is the Stonewall neighborhood over here, and this is Gladman Way up here. What's unique about this is that Stonewall Equestrian Estates basically has a platted field that they use for storing horses. That's why they call it Equestrian Estates, I guess. And so our sewer goes down the middle of it. We spent a lot of time working with them because they were equally concerned. It's their horses, their pets, their investment and stuff. And how are we going to be able to protect those horses while we had heavy highway construction going on and using basically the access way one way right through here? Well, we finally decided we're boarding their horses. We're going to pay to board them for 5 months, 6 months most at max. Basically get them out of there. It'll make it easier for the contractor. It'll put them at ease, and from the overall expense, it's not that great. We've never done that before, but there's always something new every time in RMP world. Okay, now we're back to the other side of town. This is back to the Lafayette Parkway area. There's those lots that I had talked about before. They're still going to be using those as a laydown area because they start here probably sometime in the spring of next year, work their way down the streets. This is Rosemont Garden, back behind the businesses on Southland Drive. Basically here we go through the back parking lot of Millward Funeral Home, along these properties here that we actually already own, and then cross over. Here's the dry cleaner. And basically it ends just past the dry cleaner. So an example of why getting that dry cleaner and getting that site cleaned up, it was important to us from an RMP standpoint. Moving back across town, I like to get everybody jumping around back and forth here. This is the Floyd Drive sewer. It is pretty close to being ready to be bid, so it will be under construction next year. The impact is going to be really here on Floyd Drive because we're in the middle of the street, and we're going to have to figure out some kind of traffic management plan. The good thing is they'll come down here in front of Green's Toyota, but there'll be a bore pit built right there and a receiving pit built there, or vice versa, whichever way they've got it laid out, because you drill under New Circle and pop out onto these properties down here. These are also flood abatement projects that were properties, that were purchased by Urban County government several years ago. But if you do any business over on there, be watching for that come springtime. We'll be there. Last one I wanted to highlight a little bit because this one's been very, very difficult, and this will be an in-your-face one for everybody that lives on the south side of town. This is what we call the Merrick Trunk. I made light of Green Tree and Gainesway and all the havoc that we had there for the last 18 months. There's another project that starts from that lot where we've been storing stuff at Armstrong Mill and Green Tree for what seems like forever. There's another project that comes back behind the properties here on Willowwood and works its way along the creek and then across Tate's Creek Road. We have to bore all the way under these ramps for New Circle Road. And then when we get on the inside on Tate's Creek Road, we're basically in the drive lane. We're going to have to come up with an Uber traffic control plan for that, because if you come from the south part of town and you're trying to come in via Tate's Creek Road, it's going to be a challenge. You're nodding your head. Yeah, I live down there, so yeah, I may leave for work at 3:30 in the morning just so I can try to avoid it and stuff. We've been working on this one for a while because the easements are very difficult. Somebody had mentioned to me a few weeks ago about, ecologically sensitive areas. I mean, this area down here is one that I'm really worried about because, I mean, we're just so close to the creek. We make a couple of creek crossings. We actually, the original sewer comes back behind these houses and are basically in their backyards. And so we moved to the other side because this is a remnant property basically owned by nobody. We spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to get an easement. I tracked down the daughter of one of the 4 people who owned it, and she didn't even know it ever existed and stuff. And so it was owned by a corporation that has since defunct. Tracy knows all about those kind of things. That happens, unfortunately, all the time. But anyway, a lot of work that we're going to have to do in trying to make sure that we protect those stream banks in a post-construction manner, and we're still working through that. Other projects that are in the queue, the Trunk F project, which is in the 5th district. It's back behind the houses on Barrowwood in the woods, just on the downstream side of Alumni. A lot of trees, a lot of really expensive houses. We've already had one public meeting out there. it's funny how people are. You know, I'm advocating to people that we do everything we can to try to avoid trees. You can't replace a tree. You can replace a yard, you can replace a lawn, you can replace fences, you can do all of those things. And we see this all over town with the projects we've done already. It looks bad when it first happens, but when it's over and a couple of years go by, you really can't tell that we were there before. But if you take, you all know this, if you take down a 100-year-old tree, you ain't gonna get that back in our lifetime. But it was funny, nobody at the meeting was ready to sign their easement document, but they were ready to sign their neighbors that caused it to go over into their yard as opposed to theirs. So we're going to be working through that one in the queue, but I'm not so sure we're going to see that for 2025. The Plainview trunk, I think we're ready to go with that one. It's just a little small segment by New Circle and around the Alumni Drive area. And then the East Hickman Pump Station Phase 2, this was an ARPA or a Cleaner Water Kentucky grant-funded project. What's interesting about this one, this is the pipeline that goes through Buckhorn, Kennesaw, the big pipeline I showed you at first. That's a long pipeline, and long pipelines typically equate to odor issues. So we've done a lot of research in the odor area over the last 18 months, and we've seen some places that are using a system that is injecting oxygen into the line with the sewage in order to be able to keep the oxygen level up and not allow it to go septic. This will be the first project that we do of that, and hopefully that it performs the same way that it has in Louisville and has been advertised in other places, because that will hopefully eliminate us removing our odor problem for East Hickman from one location to the other. All right, in summary, full compliance deadline 2030 now, December 31st, 2030. 65% of the capital projects are complete. 88 of the 117 reoccurring SSOs that were identified in the consent decree, 86 of those have been abated. We're getting there. We're really getting there. The total project cost is trending below, but I do worry about cost escalation. You know, it's the reality. The cost is one thing. What is really troubling for us as much as anything else, supply chain is still a big problem in my line of business. If it requires a chip or something to turn on the pumps, you wait forever for the thing that actually turns it on. I've got one project right now. We've had the pumps in dry storage for 11 months waiting for the control panel to be able to install them and turn them on. So, okay, with that, questions? Yes, sir. Yeah, odor control is not part of the RMP, so I didn't cover it here. I only brought that up because it's related to that other project. I felt like it was better this year, and I really thought it was better this year until we got to October. When we got to October, it seemed like it kind of went backwards on us pretty quickly. We've made several improvements at West Hickman already. There's another project that will be starting here sometime after the first of the year that replaces the activated carbon units that we have back there. One of the biggest things we did is we cleaned up the plant. Prior management had kind of let things go in a way that wasn't apparent to me until the odor complaints started happening. They weren't managing their solids correctly, and basically the plant was constipated. And so we spent all of last year hauling sludge out of that plant. I think it was in the month of February last year, we did 53 trailers. By July, we were doing 80 trailers a month. So, I mean, we just hauled and hauled and hauled. And I feel like that made a big difference, because we're now managing solids, and the solids that we do have, the solids inventory, it's fresher and not going septic, and so then it's not creating as much of the odors. I'll be honest with you, and I tell this to people all the time, is that, you know, will we ever make odors go away 100%? No, I don't believe it. I told my boss this a couple of weeks ago, is that, nobody sites a landfill and then proceeds to build houses around it. It's kind of what we've done here. We built 2 treatment plants years ago that were way out on the far edge of town, and then we built town around them. And that's difficult. That's really, really difficult. I think the state people would tell you that as well, too, in an unofficial capacity, is that trying to start regulating municipal wastewater treatment plants for odors would be really, really, really hard, because there's limited things you can do. In the meantime, though, is there things that we can do that are more responsible and more attentive to handling or reducing the problem? Absolutely. I still can't take people to our treatment plants and have them walk around and feel like I would pass the litmus test on what would be considered to be good housekeeping. I drive through the plant sites all the time, and I find doors open, and I find this or that or not covered and stuff. So it's an ongoing process, but I think they're a lot more attentive to it than they were before.
Years ago, there was a real bad problem. The was terrible, but that got solved. You never noticed it.
Could we have you use the mic?
Last couple of years.
Well, they record this.
I'm just complimenting on what you asked.
Okay. Well, we'll do that off the record.
So much better for years and years, and now it's just crept back in and we're starting to get questions
Yeah.
from people that live in there. Just mainly more out.
Well, okay, fair enough. I appreciate that. I'll share this with you too. It's kind of a funny story as well. It wasn't funny at the time, but when the weather started changing again, I thought, yes, well, what is it about the weather that seems to influence this so much? So I contacted Alexa Minton, who's the weather gal over at Channel 27, looking for advice. Well, of course, the first response I got from her is, hey, we need to do an interview and stuff. It's like, well, I didn't want to do an interview. I just wanted free advice. But since I asked her for something free, I guess I needed to give her something back. And so that's how I ended up on the news again here back in October. But her thing to me was high pressure has a lot to do with it. Is that high pressure is air wants to push out. And so during that high pressure, especially when the evening comes and stuff like that, the air starts cooling off, the wind wants to push down. And so my thinking is that odors, and people that are smarter than I am in this room will probably know the answer to this, is that odor collects in the upper atmosphere all day long. But when the sun goes down, you get this inversion and it shoves what's collected all the way down, and that's why it shows up right around dark all the way up until 9, 11, 12 o'clock. I have a lot of people that think we vent something on purpose at that time of night. They really believe that, and we don't. We're not doing anything differently at 7 o'clock. If anything, we're doing less because the plants are fully staffed from 7 to 4, and from that time until 7 o'clock the next morning, there's one person there, sometimes 2. But we're not doing anything except trying to keep the wheels from falling off. So anyway, we keep working on it. Webster Environmental Associates is working with us. Tetra Tech is our sub with that. They're doing some really, really good work. We've got projects that are done, others that are in the queue. We still got a ways to go, but I'm trying to get us to the point to where we can responsibly say we're doing the absolute best that we can do. Yeah, yes.
That works, right? Over in the Stormwater area, as you go, Cindy Blair going back into the equestrian estates, was there meetings with just the residents in that area or the whole subdivision to let them know what was going on? Because I've had neighbors ask that question. What are they doing back there?
The meetings that I have gone to, she asked about meetings in Stonewall. The meetings that I have gone to have involved the people at the dead end part of it, not necessarily the entire neighborhood, just the dead end part of it.
Yeah, well, just the area, it touches some of our backyards too. So that's why I was asking that, because some of the neighbors have asked that question.
Okay. Maybe we
So I don't know if y'all
maybe
need
we
to
can
do
talk a little
something.
bit in the aftermath
Yeah.
of that. Because Tuesday, when I gave this presentation, I kind of thought the same thing a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Because the Gladman Way folks, they're going to have a front row seat to see all of this.
Yeah, they're further down.
Right, but I'm
too,
just
yeah.
saying their backyard's back up to it and stuff, and so they'll get to see all of it. And so the ones that I had been to, like I said, were amazingly focused on what are you doing about our horses.
Yeah.
You know.
And I'm glad to hear you say what you're doing with the horses, because there is a young lady that she participates in the events, so she rides her horse back and forth a lot.
We've worked across a lot of farms, and it never has really turned out very well, I can say. But at least you have the ability on a typical farm to be able to transfer the livestock to another field. You didn't have that here. And the thought of having to deal with a horse getting loose on man of war, I didn't want to go there. I absolutely did not want to go there. So we've abated that at least. So, Ken, I know you're dying to ask a question, so.
Well, basically, I've got three things. One is on your green dots. I don't think you have enough green dots on there. Primarily, the one behind my house, you fixed it, so that ought to be a green dot. I didn't see it on your map.
Okay.
That's sanitary sewer overflows
Yeah.
that were fixed. The Wolf Run pump station that you all took offline and replaced with a newer, larger pump station, how many millions gallons of sanitary sewer overflow did you save by doing that?
Does a lot count?
It's a lot. Okay, it's a lot.
The only thing I could tell you, Ken, I'd have to go dig back into the records as far as the frequency of which something overflowed compared to the frequency that the new or the replaced or upgraded thing does. And I can't say it for Wolf Run as much as I can say it for something like East Hickman. East Hickman was the third worst pump station overflow that we had in Fayette County going into this. It doesn't overflow now, and honestly, it now oversized. We don't get any wet weather in the big storage tank that we built. That's one of the reasons why we're out here working on it again, because when they did the peninsula, we lined all of the trunk sewers along the reservoir. It got rid of a tremendous amount of water, more than we ever expected it would. So when we have a major rain, most recently, we have had both tanks at West Hickman Treatment Plant full, almost ready to start bypassing. And the tank at East Hickman only has 3 feet in it. We're trying to fix that, because that can't be. It's got to balance out better than that. But I'll look to see how many overflows historically we had going in for Wolf Run, because I can tell you, I can't remember the last time we overflowed at that pump station. Can't remember.
But I think you need more green dots. Your post-construction restoration, i.e. after you put the line through and then you come back with post-construction vegetation, who's working through that, and how does one get involved in that conversation?
Bob Peterson is who you need to work with. But if it looks like to me you've tried that and it's not working the way you want to, then,
Well, okay.
then you can engage me as well. Our pipeline, you've heard me say this a million times in all the years that we've known each other, pipeline contractors don't do restoration very well. They just don't. They throw grass seed around and stuff like that, and you hope that they can get 70% restored within a reasonable time frame. We've talked about this at various times, that maybe we need to hire landscape people as primes and have them sub out the pipe work, but if you've got a different suggestion for it, I'm anxious to hear that.
Item 3, what's the lifespan of the pipe material that you're putting in? What's your design lifespan on that?
I would say somewhere between 50 to 100 years. Most of it's plastic now. Lifespan's a function of whatever underground utility comes along and knocks the crap out of it. We're putting in PVC or fiber reinforced pretty much everywhere now, so you don't have the corrosion worries that you've had before. So as long as somebody doesn't come digging through there or directionally drilling through there and knock a hole in it and stuff like that, I think that pipe's going to outlive everybody in this room.
I have a question about the New Circle project.
Sure.
Is it fixing overflows right now? Are we having issues?
The park that is located on Hawthorne Drive, I can't
Yes.
remember the name of that park.
I think it's
behind.
Elkhorn? Is it just Elkhorn Park?
It might be Elkhorn Park. There's anywhere, I think there's 3 consent decree ones that are in that park. I think there's 5 in our monitoring book. You know how this goes. You could bolt down all the lids and make it one, but it's Hawthorne Park through that segment is where the problem is. And at the top of the hill, when you get up to Edgelawn, there's also one there. It doesn't go off as frequently as it would otherwise, because I think that the basin that engineering built up there a few years ago helped that a lot.
So there's a lot of infiltration into the sewer line that's causing, and so you're building a new sewer line?
Well, whether it's infiltration coming in or it's direct inflow or if it's coming from private property or public, we don't always necessarily know.
Okay.
Again, when we did the peninsula and stuff like that, we were shocked with how much water that we came out. You remember that when we negotiated the consent decree, the concept is that we were not going to get any inflow or infiltration out of the system. We were instead going to be building it large enough to handle the 2-year, 24-hour storm. Because then, first of all, you can't fail at that. You can get that right. Then any inflow and infiltration we got out of it just made the system more robust. Leading into the consent decree, I had seen so many communities that said they were going to get 40% out or they were going to get 50% out, and they didn't even come close to that number. And so then the cost of their consent decree just started escalating. That happened in Indianapolis and Milwaukee that come to mind, and I was really trying to avoid that. So back to the new circle, it is built to handle all of the flow to abate those overflows in the park for a 2-year, 24-hour storm. If along the way we have gotten water or in the future get additional water out of the system, whether it comes from public sources or private sources, it just provides additional capacity. Yes, sir.
One question that you might be able to address, or it might be Third Rock, but are we seeing a trend as far as water quality and E. coli in water as these sewer overflows are with the RMPs in progress? Are we seeing a relationship with increasing water quality values?
You're right. I think it may be a good Third Rock question. I'll be honest with you, I'm not so sure that I am seeing it, at least from my vantage point. Personally, I think exfiltration is our bigger problem, but it would be interesting to know what kind of data that we've been getting over the last couple years, because it's been so dry. Overflows have not been the issue. We've had a few wet weather events, but they are more rare than they are before. We have alarms that are in key manholes all over town that we use to activate our sewer overflow response inspection team. I can't tell you the last time my phone went off on that. Just because it's been so dry and stuff. But it would be interesting to know what the dry weather screening results have shown. Hopefully that we find areas where we're getting E. coli or bacteria hits that we're going in and looking at that. But if I were around for what's after the consent decree, that would be my biggest focus, is working in the collection system and other critical areas, looking at private laterals. Jennifer remembers this. We talked about private laterals 5 years ago. We did a demonstration project, but then we couldn't really get any traction on it beyond that, because I really think that is the bigger and ongoing problem, is exfiltration from old sewers. Thank you.
Alrighty, thanks, Charlie. And next we have Mark doing a stormwater update for 2024.
You do the bubble. Is it the top one?
The middle one advances you forward, the bottom one advances you back, and then the upper one is the
Bubble?
bubble.
Okay.
Yeah, and it only took me a half an hour to find out.
Thanks, Bailey. I'm Mark Sanders, Engineering Section Manager for the Stormwater Group, but for the Division of Water Quality. They just give a stormwater section update. Today we talked about stormwater priority list, what we've got active in construction, active in design. Talk a little bit about the minor capital projects, the capital maintenance rehab program, and then just see some unique sites and photos that we've encountered over the past year. For the priority list, to become a capital project, it goes through several steps. First step is we've got to be notified of the project. So it has to come through, let me get this better. It has to come through like 311. Charlie, Greg receive a call, I receive a call. So that's the first thing, is just us being notified. Then we'll go out and investigate. First step in this process is the storm event. The storm event that we hold to this is the 25-year, 24-hour event. Anything over that 50-year event happens, our system can't handle it. So there's a limit to what our system can do. If it is under the 25-year, then it moves out to a maintenance issue on flooding. Like, what's going on? Is it something that can be cleared up through leaves or blocking an inlet? Or has a basketball got stuck in the storm pipe? So we'll see if our maintenance crew can fix the problem. If they can't fix the problem, then then we start scratching our head going, hey, there's maybe something going on here. That's when it turns into a preliminary engineering report, that we actually start seeing, hey, can we see what's going on? Can you model this? And sometimes even though that we get to that engineering stage where we're looking at it, that doesn't mean that there's always going to be a solution. So sometimes we run into issues that, hey, there's just not a fix here. But if it does, then we figure out the problem. Then we put it on, there's an equation where we can compute the severity score with the others, and then it kind of gets ranked. And then from that, it'll get a green light to get on the list. So like I said, the two biggies that to make it to the list, one is the storm event. It's got to get the storm event. The other is street and road flooding, this bottom one, with either a greater 1 foot in the driving lane or crown of the road is not visible. So one of those two has to happen. Where's it at? So you can go to the Stormwater website. We keep this list updated, we try to update it every January. The link's at the bottom. I know we've recently updated our website. I think it's still kind of the same. But, so if anybody goes there, they can kind of see it's ranked from 1 to, I think, 100, some in between. We start at the top of the list. We're working our way down. Right now, we're kind of in that high 80s, low 90s, so we've been at this for a while. And then some of these ones some of the capital projects that we're getting ready to talk about is coming from this list. So Eastern Ohio, if anybody that has been downtown, around Elm Tree, around the Lyric, around 3rd Street, you have experienced this project. It's been going on for the past year. The genesis for the project is the famous photo right there on the left side, flooding at 3rd and Ohio. So let me get my button. The new storm is tying in right here, coming up Elm, down 3rd, up Ohio Street to 4th Street. Green line is while we've got the road blown up, we went ahead and upgraded some sanitary, and then also Kentucky American. So it's kind of a collaborative project that everybody, let's fix everything while the road's torn up, and then just so we're not going back and forth. Currently, the contractor is about halfway up Ohio Street, planning to finish late January, early February. Cost for the project right now is around 2.2 is what the bid was. Just some construction photos that kind of grabbed along the way. I like this photo just because whenever you're be it storm or sanitary and you're working in town, and you just have a lot of things that you have to encounter from utilities. So the new storm is this yellow line kind of coming this way. There's an existing storm, the 2 red lines, that's being replaced. the existing or new sanitary that's coming down, a water line, another sanitary on this side, another water line. There's a gas line also that I don't have in the picture. So there's a reason that some of these projects don't move as quick as they do out in open fields. So I just thought that was a neat photo. Another project that we have that's just finished up this past fall is Line Drive. This project was fixing flooding over here on Line Drive. It's cutting through two apartment complexes around a tennis court, around a swimming pool, and in the upper left is a detention basin that also got rehabbed through this project. It came in a little bit over 1.4, and like I said, just completed this fall. Like Charlie said, during construction it does not look good, but post-construction, that's whenever we're trying to get everything back to the best as possible. So these next couple slides are before and after photos that so here they're building the wall, and then came back with sod, so kind of have a this is a good one. You can kind of see the same white car in the background. And this is the new detention basin that the new flumes in it, and then the new wooden horse fence. Next project is out Joyland. This one's a two-phase project. Last year I spoke about phase one, which installed 3 detention basins. This was just from the size of it, we kind of had to break it up into 2, because whenever you have a severe flooding issue, you've got to have a place to put the water, just so we're not passing it downstream. So first phase was creating the detention to put the water. Second phase, which we're getting ready to do, is the infrastructure to get the water to the basins. So phase one's complete. That was creating detention on Lisa, Cabot, and Shandon. Phase two is going to be creating the new infrastructure. Phase one's complete, came in a little under 1.3 million. Phase two, we applied and was awarded a FEMA hazard mitigation grant for a little under, actually over $1 million, but just for construction, $999,000. Low bid came in a little over $1 million, so we've already got awards, and it's going through council right now for approval, with the intention to start early 25. So these next couple are projects we actually have in design. Cooper Drive, 2 areas that this is addressing. A button here. One is some flooding right here on Cooper, and then up here on Romney. This project's a 100% complete. We've got plans ready to go out the door. Kind of just holding them right now, just through winter, just so we'll get hopefully better bids after the holidays. Estimate's going to be around the 2.5 mark. So it's this and traffic control is we've been working through, but we think we've got traffic pleased. Mintel Park North, down here to the south is Richmond Road. I think it's just off the list. This is also broken up into 2 phases. This is all these are priority reports, are on the priority list. I think this one's like number 87. This first phase of Mintel is going to be addressing flooding on Mintel on this northern section, taking new line up to Kramer, and then from Kramer down North Ashland, and then tying in to the existing system there. Target, yeah.
Will that project improve the stormwater sump pump flooding that occurs at Ashland and Kramer? It completely ices over, and I have a friend that has a front seat view to children falling in the intersection every morning, all winter long.
Where is that? So
Ashland and Kramer?
Yep.
All
That,
of the Kramer sump pumps
Yep.
flow down the street and pool in that intersection and then freeze.
we had a public meeting a couple weeks ago, and I think that intersection was mentioned. So we've told our consultant to kind of keep that in mind as we're working through final design. So, but if everything goes good, target for construction's late next year. But one thing we get into is the kind of always two big issues. Charlie mentioned it. One is easements, because that's a big hold up. Another one is existing utilities, that until we get in the final design, you don't know if we're really going to have a conflict with water line, gas line, or something. Well, their budget might not be at the same pace as yours, so that's where we're getting into right now with this one. So some minor capital projects that we've got going on. Pebble Creek Stream Bank stabilization. This is kind of cool. We had used a new product called InstaTurf. You can kind of see the before and after on vegetation. This thing sprouted up like crazy. So tickled with this, as you can see kind of in the photos. Some of the ducks are as well. Elizabeth Street culvert. This is, I can't remember what the cross street is. This is one that culvert runs kind of like that across the street. A third-party garbage truck had got too close to the curb inlet and actually collapsed the curb inlet, which in turn collapsed the culvert. So we've got it kind of rehabbed right now, but we're going through a design to replace this culvert just due to its age, and just get everything fixed back. You can kind of see some of the older brick on top. Town Branch culvert, very similar. A little bubble. Right around here on Cox Street, there used to be a curb box inlet that was removed. And this is the big park project to the southeast of this. The curb inlet was removed, but the box was never actually rehabbed. So this project's going to be going in and actually fixing this hole. So this is just showing some of the minor projects where they are throughout the county. So there is no one spot. It's truly everywhere. 3 projects up top. Just talk a little bit about Meadowthorpe Phase 2. That one's actually getting close to completion, about 80%. Little stormwater project at Dogwood Park. We're installing some stormwater line to get around a natural spring, because the spring has a incentive grant with it to help protect that spring. And then Bernard Drive is a project that's going to happen in the spring. Where's the Furlong Drive that's part of the Cleaner Water grant that Charlie talked about is on this one as well. That one it's being advertised. We're kind of finalizing the award. Once council comes back in January, it'll start making its way through council for spring construction. So the infrastructure program is a program comprised of 3 full-time employees that have a $1 million budget to rehab or fix any existing stormwater infrastructure throughout Fayette County. The urban service. With our GIS, I had some numbers pulled. We have I think it's 900 and it's either 905 miles or 805 miles of storm line, and over 50,000 structures, be it head walls, inlets, manholes. So there's a lot of infrastructure that needs fixing. But here's some just photos that they see or do or have helped with and corrected. One in the lower right, Ray Street, Kentucky. The storm line was so old, an old clay pipe. Kentucky American Water put their water line through it. Didn't realize that they was even going through a storm pipe. So we rehabbed that. a buried inlet on the north where Wyndham Hills and Clay's Mill is. We get a lot of debris and debris that kind of collects on some trash racks that we'll help with. Inlets full of trash, cleaning flumes. They'll work all hours of the day. Debris blocking, and then broken inlets we see probably the most. This some just some numbers that they have done in the past. So like CCTV work, just camera in the line at 22 work orders, point repair 156. So they've been averaging around that 200, 250 sites these past couple of years. These next ones are just some unique pictures that we've seen over the past year. That we got a call on a manhole. It turns out KU set a transformer box near an old brick manhole, so we had to go in and kind of fix this up. Warren, this was kind of interesting. That this blue line is kind of in conjunction with this picture. You can kind of see the water is kind of pulled up out to this lower half of the cul-de-sac. And this is a normal, just everyday summer storm event. So nothing, it's not a crazy thing. Well, they went down and found, I put the little hydrograph, they went down and, well, thought I had it. They went down and found this structure right here is just completely impacted. So this one on the left. And then, so they cleaned that up, was able to put a structure in, then put a grate, kind of did some stone around it. The whole little commercial group out there is tickled to death. They've not had an issue since. Crossbores, see this a lot. Gas line come through, water line come through. We'll call them, they'll come out, kind of help work with us, get it kind of relocated. This one was actually, whenever they was out fixing their line, we found an old set of tools actually in the storm pipe for whatever reason. But winter garden community or concrete flumes is another thing that's part of city infrastructure to kind of help maintain. This one on the left, you can kind of see it a little bit overgrown. So on the right is after they've kind of bushwhacked and hauled everything off. Parker's Mill on the left, concrete or corrugated metal pipe just completely almost collapsed. Got it straightened up best we could, and got it working good. Polo Club, this one, you got Costco down here to the south, Man of War, Polo Club, so this little intersection. This just shows what happens whenever the end of the pipe in the head wall isn't fully connected. There's a little gap in it, and as such, you can kind of see the erosion that's going on down here to the south. So we're working on this one. Versailles, I love this picture. That you had some, I guess, snowbirds take off and go to Florida for several months and come back and found this in their driveway. So now the good thing is storm and sanitary is kind of over here in the sidewalk roadway. So it's not a us issue. It's just kind of a unique picture I liked. But with that, any questions that we'd like to try and answer or help with?
And please say your name when you have a question.
If you do.
I'm Mark. I have a question.
Yeah.
Steve Evans. Could you tell me if you have a policy for when you use concrete flumes as opposed to vegetated channels with the promotion of infiltration through the vegetated channels? So yeah, when do you decide to use one versus the other?
Since I've been here, I don't know if we've used concrete flumes that I can remember. In the design, that's usually on the consultant to kind of help tell us what works, what doesn't work. But since I've been here, I can't remember us using a concrete flume. I don't know if I dodged your question good, but no. Anything?
I didn't have a question. I was just going to add that, a lot of those programs you were talking about, those came from the consent decree.
Yeah.
I mean, we didn't have a stormwater maintenance program really per se until the consent decree came along, and in the aftermath of that, Mark and many others helped build that. That's why you saw the maintenance work, the table that he had up there. It started in 2016, I think it was.
Yeah.
It's one of the first year that we
Yeah.
funded that. And it continues to grow because there are definitely a lot of needs out there.
Yeah. Yeah.
My question is related to the Southland project. I see Engineer Steinmetz is here in terms of the author of that document. What is the status of it? There were like 8 different projects in that, and I know you've done 2, the WGPL Pensacola Park one, and then you get 5 stars for the Southland Park Yuma Drive program. That was really, we're really thrilled with that, Charlie, in terms of the work they did with that. But the Southview, that was supposed to address flooding on Southview, what I'm calling now the Moberly Springs parcel, as opposed to, I don't want to call it Allendale anymore, but Moberly Springs area. In terms of that, could you comment on the status of that, please?
The Southview, I think it's kind of it's a never dead one, but it's one that it becomes the detention. You got to have some place to put the water, and we've just never had enough. Let Greg give a update on that.
I guess it's a good thing you asked about that, because yesterday, day before, Councilmember Savigny called me, and he knows some people that own property at the intersection of Cherry Bark and Rosemont Garden. Now, after watching Charlie's thing, I kind of forgot about Wolf Run G, but we're trying to set up a meeting with at least one of the guys that owns some property, and he knows others. We'll talk to them and see where it lays, because we can't go up Southview Drive till we can put the water somewhere. So it's got a little bit of life in it, and Environmental Services, I think, is working on, we had that little thing on Derby Drive that was in there.
Yeah.
The Derby Drive project has been transitioned to a 319H funded program.
So
from that standpoint, and then the Moberly Springs.
no comment.
Yeah.
Moberly Springs is on hold, basically. I think that the last public meeting I didn't go to, but others did, it didn't go very well. So I think we need to pull back and on that.
Yeah. So. Anybody else? Yeah.
I got a question that I don't know if you would be the person that can answer this, but in context of the flooding and kind of known areas and I kind of think about the term capacity assurance as far as into stormwater and areas that we've got that are built out. As our city develops and we get more impervious cover, are there situations where developments are restricted in some way because of existing or the potential for that increasing flooding on streets and roads and other things like that?
Not exactly. I guess I don't know. Let me be sure. I think as long as developments keep happening, they're just going to have to contain more on their site. So they won't be able to just tie directly in without, and then that goes through engineering and then just showing that they've accounted for any runoff on their property and it's contained before it's going into the system. That kind of help. Yeah.
Yes, and there's development that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and there's development that happens that doesn't get permitted or doesn't go through a subdivision. That's, driveways, people go by the rooftops.
kind of cumulative thing,
Yeah.
that something wasn't a problem, and then a few years down the road now.
Yeah. I don't know if I have a good answer for that, but that's, yeah, yeah.
The house by house and parcel by parcel thing is always going to be a challenge for us because we simply don't have the resources to try to go out and manage that. It's like every year leaf blowing. I had some guy call me and chew me out over the phone because the last 3 years in a row, he's gotten a letter from us telling him he's not supposed to blow his leaves in the street. He said, you could use up all your time on the hand-to-hand combat with individuals. I am particularly interested to see how we can take the things that we've done in the expansion areas and be able to apply that more broadly in now what is going to be the new expansion areas. I think it presents a really great opportunity. But when you work in the urban core and stuff like that, it's kind of like Ken asked about Southern Drive. You're left with basically a landscape that's very difficult to be able to make substantive changes when individuals can kind of go along and check because we still have to wait to handle it.
Any other questions? Last thing, just prepping everybody, if you're coming to the annual meeting next Friday, just be prepared for this presentation. So, but with that, thank you. And if anybody has any questions, feel free to call me, email me, and I'll be glad to help you.
So now Third Rock is going to present, they did the proposed monitoring program in September, and then you all showed up for the work group, which was great, and we had good discussion and collaboration on what changes people wanted made. And so now Mac is going to talk about those.
Thank you, Bailey. And before I get started with this, Russ, to answer your previous question, we're about to do a statistical analysis, a trend analysis from the past 5 years, and then going back from that. The last one we did was in 2019 to see if there was a statistic trend instead of a general trend with E. coli and other pollutants like that. But a lot of the projects and repairs hadn't been done in 2019, so now we can maybe see if there's some good improvement on that. So, and also I know Tetra Tech does a little bit of work on crunching some of those numbers with the R&P project. So if you have questions too, you can ask Abby. Sorry, Abby. So, and also, again, to reiterate what Bailey said, this is kind of a summary of changes we've made based off of the feedback after we met with the workshop with a lot of the community volunteers and some of the scientific community and then our project team. So this is kind of just what we've changed since then based off of your all's feedback. So if you want to see the full-fledged proposed updates to the water quality monitoring program, I would go and look back at the September presentation. So today I'm just going over what's changed, what's different from what we presented back in September. So first of all, just to kind of generalize and give a brief summary of the first presentation and what we originally proposed, we had to look at over 100 small, like sub-watershed scale in-stream sites and come up with an idea for it to make sense to sample all of them. We had to take into account a lot of factors, how many volunteers could participate, the scale, the level of effort, and if we were collecting good data to, in the future, look at this for monitoring and statistical analysis, while knocking out some of the reiterative sites, some of the redundant sites that had practically the same drainage area. And so, again, look back at the September presentation for what we did on that. But we, at the SSAC meeting, presented it to you all, and then this, just to kind of rehash it, on the left here, you can see those are all the sites we looked at. 100 sites, all those yellow dots, and we called out here all the different major watersheds in Lexington, and 100 sites to which we whittled down to these, which it was 59 sites that we thought made sense to propose going forward with our monitoring program. So just rehashing that. And then on the 10th of October, we met with Tetra Tech and LFUCG and volunteers and other members of the scientific community, and we wanted your feedback. You know, we really pride ourselves on the fact that Lexington's water quality program has a heavy volunteer and scientific community. I forget the word I'm trying to use, but they participation. I'm still trying to wake up this morning. And so we wanted to say, you know, if we're going forward and making changes on this program, we want volunteer input. We want feedback from the community to make sure, you know, if you guys are going to be the ones doing this, you know, are you happy with it? And so we had some really good feedback, and Abby at Tetra Tech did a SWOT analysis on it to see like some of the strengths and weaknesses, maybe some of the opportunities we were missing out on. And so we got some really good feedback, and then continued correspondence, because we only had 2 hours, and some of y'all had a lot more to say that you know, we could cover in those 2 hours. So after that, we got some more feedback and email correspondence. And here's just a summary of those site revisions. So there were some sites that were added downstream of other urban areas. So it's not areas in the main urban service boundary, but there are some urban areas outside of it, like the horse park, and then also looking at expansion areas. So there's a good amount that's being added into Boone Creek, and volunteers and some of the project team wanted to see what that expansion is going to look like for the streams and some of the water quality. So we added a few more sites there where the urban service boundary is going to be expanding. Additionally, there's some interest with the project team saying it'd be really cool to get schools involved in or at least give them the opportunity to say, hey, volunteers are going to be collecting water samples here. If you all wanted to take 30 minutes out of your day or an hour out of your day, come down to the stream that's being sampled right on the property boundary, and you can kind of see what data is being collected, what water chemistry is all about, and you know, just kind of maybe let the kids get their feet wet a little bit. And then additionally, there was some feedback from some of the volunteers that wanted to add another site at the extreme upstream of Vaughn's Branch in Wolf Run. And so we were happy to add, you know, what's another site? So we threw that in there. Additionally, we talked about some of the monitoring methods and some of the frequencies. And everything in black here is what was previously presented, but there were a few changes that we, the project team, and some of the volunteers wanted to stress, make sure were carried through into the proposed monitoring program. And so again, we're doing quarterly water quality grab sampling with trained volunteers regardless of the weather, and then 1 wet weather grab sampling by a qualified sub-consultant. And then what we changed was, in a different work order, we routinely collect wet and dry quarterly grab sampling at 7 major watershed sites. And so to continue forward with that frequency for statistics, and also to make sure we're capturing the major watershed sites, we decided to clarify that and add that back into the proposed monitoring program, as opposed to grouping those in with just quarterly water quality and then 1 annual. We wanted to make sure that there were wet and dry quarterly at those sites. And then along with this, we're not just doing water quality. There's macroinvertebrate, there's fish, and a new geomorphic and erosion assessment that we are proposing. But again, at those quarterly sites, we typically do an annual analysis of the macroinvertebrate populations there. With the proposed program, we were suggesting moving it towards biannually, every other year. But again, for the same reason, we wanted to make sure we did quarterly wet and dry. We decided to go ahead and make those 7 sites an annual annual macroinvertebrate sampling there. So on the left, we have the sites that were proposed back in September, and the 59 sites, which you can see here. And these are the little urban service areas I was talking about on the outskirts. And after the meeting, the volunteers were like, hey, well, aren't there any sites over there that are urban service areas? And I said, that's an excellent question. We'll add those in. And so we went and looked at some of the sites that made sense, some of the sites that we previously looked at or had historic data on, and added those sites in. You can see on the right, which we're proposing today, those blue dots, which it's a little hard to see maybe in the back, but these blue dots we added in, swapped around. Those are the revised sites. So now we added 5 sites and we've swapped a few around. So that brings the total sites to 64 sites in total. And that's with all the changes to the methods and the frequencies and everything we discussed back in September. So a little bit shorter presentation. So we do have some time for questions and discussions. So.
I'll ask a question.
Yeah.
Does Lexington have any TMDLs that you have to report on?
For the TMDLs, Abby, do we have to do anything with that?
Not that we have to report on. We do have bacteria TMDLs, but there are not numeric limits associated with those in the MS4 permit. The language is that we have to make progress towards achieving those waste load allocations, and that's done through implementation of the swamp. We also submitted a draft TMDL strategy in the 2020 MS4 permit report, and right now we're working on a status report on what actions have been implemented to date.
Thanks, Abby.
I have a question about the benthic macroinvertebrate sampling. You state that are there only 7 sites that are being done for bugs, or are you doing more sites for bugs than that?
No, I apologize if I created any confusion. We have 7 sites that we currently do quarterly, or not quarterly, annually. However, we presented that we're doing it for all 64 sites, but 7 are done annually because we've done that previously in the past. But then the other, quick math, 57 sites we are doing biannually, which is a pretty intensive process.
And this is a comment for Director Martin. That's the best money we can spend, in my opinion.
The macroinvertebrate sampling.
I missed the first part there. I missed the best money we can spend.
Thank you, Ken.
Can I just add one quick clarification?
Please.
So previously, we talked about this some at the work group. We have what we call routine monitoring, and then the watershed focus monitoring program is separate. So the routine sites were the ones that we were getting quarterly samples at, and the macro and the fish. And then the watershed focus monitoring was a separate grab sampling effort that we did, chemistries and collected samples at in-stream sites and outfalls. This proposed monitoring program was an attempt to merge the two. So what was the original proposed number, 59?
Yes.
59 sites was inclusive of the sites from the Watershed Focus Monitoring Program and those historical sites. So based on feedback at the work group, we heard you that we're going to be losing some of the data quality that we were getting quarterly at those 7 sites. So we're separating those back out. We'll collect the annual wet weather at the 54
57
now.
Yeah.
And get quarterlies at those 7 sites still, but it's all still going to be one program. So you can kind of think of them as priority or historical sites and then supplemental sites.
Thank you, Abby. Yes.
Yeah, not related to your current presentation, but could you comment on the question asked of Charlie about whether there's been any observed improvements to water quality due to the RMP program?
Oh, yes. I think I might have mentioned it a little ago, but we are doing a statistic trend analysis this year after we get all of the water quality data in by the end of the year for the annual report that gets submitted in April. Is that correct? Or June? July, one of those dates. When that gets submitted, there will be a trend analysis. And when we did it back in 2019, we didn't have all the RMP projects completed that we do today, and so it'd be nice to kind of see now if there's any statistical trends or decreases or increases in pollutant loads based on that. So we have more data now, and we have more projects complete. So I can't give a definite answer now, but hopefully yes.
Sorry, I'll add one more quick thing. So we'll be looking at a 10-year time period there because the first trend analysis was the 5-year period from 2015 to 2019, and then this one will do 2020 to 2024. So we should be able to see some good trends in that.
Could I clarify one thing too, John? It's kind of, we have the data, the data's there. We have the data. It'll be a matter of extrapolating. So the trend analysis that Matt and Abby are referring to is something that we would do routinely every 5 years as part of a program evaluation. That's required by our permit. Teasing out that specific information will be something that we probably need to put a little additional effort into. So you'll have general trends that come out of that evaluation we do every 5 years. But in terms of specifically tying those back to, geographically where these projects went in and where they pulled water off, that's something that we probably need to consider and put a little more focus on. If we want to be able to report that specifically, we need to tease that out specifically.
Thank you, Molly. Yes.
This is related to the stormwater outfall monitoring. Before, we did how many sites with stormwater outfalls that were monitored from that standpoint? And I understand you have dropped all those sites from this program.
Yes, but it will be captured in another program.
Where's Bailey? When will we have an opportunity to discuss the IDDE program in your stormwater outfall monitoring?
It's next on our list. So we've been having like internal conversations about the illicit discharge screening factors. So let us get through Christmas and into the new year, and we'll probably have a draft sometime in the spring.
So we are continuing permit-required dry weather screening. That went on the whole time the watershed focus monitoring program was going on, and they dry weather screen all major outfalls every 2 years. So that's going to be going on the whole time that we're working on this new program. But we wanted to do this first because we said in our 2019 NOI application that we were going to propose updates to the monitoring program. So we're planning to submit a letter to Division of Water this month with all this information. After we get that wrapped up and put a bow on it, we'll be shifting our focus back to what to do with this illicit discharge screening factor effort. And the intent there is to focus on priority areas. If we're able to see from this trend analysis that there's still areas that have high levels of E. coli, maybe we can figure out what the cause of that is and focus our dry weather screening efforts in areas like that.
Can you tell us what the expected start date of this sampling program is going to be?
Right.
And what the volunteer recruitment program is going to look like?
Yeah, so we have a good volunteer base already to get to that, but I don't know the specifics of who is going to be coordinating with the volunteers on that. I think that's still to be determined. However, we're presenting this to you all before we have submitted any of this to Kentucky Division of Water. We wanted the volunteers, we wanted the community to really give us a good feedback on it before we send anything to KDOW for them to look over. We are going to be submitting that towards the end of this year, and so we have to wait until they approve it before we can implement any kind of scheduling.
Just a quick question. Denise O'Mara. When you were deciding and kind of finalizing your list of which sites you were going to use, or what am I trying to say?
Monitor.
I have no idea.
Yeah.
What would have been an aspect of a particular site that you would take it off versus one that you would keep?
Right. So which if you have more questions after my answer, you can look back at the previous presentation. There's a lot that went into deciding what sites we kept and what sites we felt were iterative or redundant. One thing I mentioned was it captures pretty much the same drainage area, and so having one site just downstream of another site doesn't really give us any new information. Another thing is we have a lot of data, some of the data going back to 1999 that we are looking at to see the severity of the site for pollution. If it was a site that is on an impaired waters body or impaired water stream or segment, has a lot of historic high exceedance of parameters. That was one we wanted to include. We also wanted representative drainage areas to make sure we have a good distribution. All the drainage areas are about the same size. That way it helps us kind of have a one-to-one for establishing priority in the future. There was a lot that went into it. Also, if it was previously assessed for macroinvertebrate, we wanted that to kind of go through, and we wanted to have a lot of data points for future analysis to see if there's any trends that we can pull from this with improving of stormwater and storm sewer and all that. So, does that answer your question? All right, thank you.
Mac, Steve Evans.
Hey, Steve.
I'm curious about the logistics of the wet weather sampling. I know, Lexington streams are very flashy, and so getting to those sites during the hydrographic rise is often challenging. Could you speak a little bit to how you intended to meet that?
Yeah, so that's going to be a all hands on deck kind of sampling event at Third Rock when that or at a qualified subconsultant when that happens. Originally, we were looking at trying to hit all that in one day. With 64 sites, I just don't think that's going to be possible. So we want to break it up in groups of sampling dates that make sense, whether that's based off a watershed or drainage area. And I can't put a number to how many we think we can hit right now each time. I'd like to say around 20, 25, but we have to really crunch numbers and kind of look at manpower and see what we can do with that.
What it boiled down to is basically 4 teams. That, we were trying to average this out. We could field 4 teams, and for those of you that have never done that, like Steve, it may be 3 o'clock in the morning when you have to be there. And that was another reason that the proposed program involved volunteers handling the dry weather or unpredicted weather events, because you can schedule that in advance, but the wet weather events are not something that can be scheduled in advance, and that's your resource pool obviously goes way down for that. That was another factor in why the proposed monitoring program just had one wet weather at all 64 sites over the course of a year, as opposed to a quarterly for the dry weather sites. But like Max said, we did add back in the 7 historic sites just to keep that data. But you're exactly right, it's going to be a tremendous challenge.
Yes.
I'm going to argue that volunteers could be used in that, especially screened and trained and equipped volunteers could do that. If you think of volunteer fire departments, they've got like an 8-minute warning time on that for some very high-risk activities. So there are precedents for that.
All right, last call on questions. All right, thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Mac. Okay, we're going to go over potential meeting topics for next time, if anyone has any suggestions. Ken.
I'd like to propose a review of the FEMA hazard mitigation program in terms of funding for buyout properties and things along that line. I consider that sort of a stormwater type of thing. If that would be one. Second one is the IDDE program for the next meeting, if that's after the first of the year and y'all have had a chance to discuss that. And then third is, when are we going to get our new permit from the state?
Okay. Does anyone else have any potential meeting topic ideas? Alrighty, well, our 2025 meeting dates are March 7th, June 6th, September 5th, and December 5th. And so do we have a motion to approve those dates? Awesome. Do we have a second? Awesome. And then let's go over announcements. So on Black Friday, we collected 470 gallons of cooking oil at the Gobble Grease Toss. And then thanks to everyone who participated in the Art by Nature Gallery. We had over 100 pieces of art. And December 9th, we have the Wolf Run Watershed Council meeting. December 13th, we have our big workshop with construction industry. December 31st, we're planning on launching the new website soon, so that should be more integrated and easier to find stuff, so hopefully y'all have better luck with it. And then March 7th is our next SSAC meeting that you just approved. March 22nd through the 30th, we have our 6th annual Water Week. And that's another one about the webpage. And you can look for incentive grants in February and March of the new year. So that's all. Thank you all for coming.
Hey, Bailey, I'm curious about the December 31st. Is that IT's deadline?
I
as
think
far
it's
as-
soft.
Okay. Well, I'm just saying is that I'm surprised that
don't
they
think-
would launch it going into a holiday. Years ago, we decided to launch our capacity assurance program on the 4th of July weekend. It didn't go well. I will never launch anything going into a holiday weekend ever again. So the website might be there on January 1. You never know. It might not be.
So soft. So, yeah. Yes. Anyways, good luck. Merry Christmas.